All right, it's Mark, and it's time to start our live show this week. And so tonight's show, I want to talk about our website, and it's animateclay.com. So we do have a 5-week challenge, which is due to be completed by next Wednesday. So that will be on the 18th. Today is the 11th, so 7 more days for that. And okay, so let me get rid of this. Put on our webcam. So I've actually been working on this a little bit before the show, just mixing up some colors. And, oh, hey Ron, what's going on? Yes, 5, 4, 3, 2, and we're started. So anyway, so last week we didn't have a show. It was the 4th of July here, and my wife had off from work, so I did not have a chance to do a live show. But not to worry, we are back. And so anyways, let's kind of like touch base on or recap what we've been doing the last time we had a live show. And so we've been making this set here. We have our sketch. So we have our we have a tree. We have some hills in the background here. We have a bridge, and so we put all this together in the past. I guess like two shows where we had live shows. So we have our tree, which we've begun, and this was just a temporary sort of piece of green clay I stuck on here. And so before the show, I did some thinking about this, and what I decided was that I want to use a clay that's darker than this the green color on the grass. So it took me a while, but I mixed up this color here, which is a light green. Well, not really light. It's actually darker than the rest, but it's the lighter of the two. This is the darker green, and so I used some straight green and some dark green and mixed the two together as well as yellow. So we have essentially 3 shades of green to work with here. I also found a texture pad, which I haven't used one of these texture pads in a really super long time. I got this from Berman Industries a long time ago. I think it's silicone or possibly rubber, like a latex type rubber with some colorant added to it. The reason why I say that is because it seems to have turned white in spots. I don't know if that's because of dirt and age, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be clean. So I think this might have some rubber that's slowly over time kind of disintegrating, which is not very nice. But we use these to press in a texture into our clay. So we're going to use that later. So one of the things I thought of also when I was looking at this was I had this piece of clay sort of sitting on top of this tree trunk. And it's not bad, you know, but I'm not going to use this as a sculpture, of course. This is just a piece of flat clay. But the trunk is good and everything, but I don't really like the way that it's kind of sitting and like sagging over the other parts of the hill behind it. So I kind of want to make this, I want to prop it up. And so I am going to do that before I work on the rest of this tree. So that it's kind of even and level. And I'm just wanting to do that for aesthetic reasons. You know, there's no real need to do this, but I think it'll look nicer. So just gonna kind of add some clay under here, and so the camera won't see that, what's behind it. So just a few small pieces of clay. That's all it really takes, and that will give it hopefully a more realistic look, like it's actually growing out of the ground and not just laying flat. Alright, so this is the clay I just mixed up, and what I need to do is I need to shape it into the same shape as what we have here. Now my reasoning behind the darker color clay as opposed to, you know, like this color, which is a lot lighter, is that when I put on, where is it? I have some red puppet putty here someplace. There it is. So this red, I'm thinking will pop a little bit more on a darker color like this. I think that the color should, you know, stick out a bit more. So that's really my thinking on that. So anyways, so I'm going to kind of clean my desk off here, and then I'm gonna get rid of this temporarily. I'm gonna put you on my desk. Okay. Whoops. Oh, almost dropped my clay. So I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to... Now, I could just roll this out flat in a pasta roller machine here, and then I can just put it under this and then trace with something and then see where it is, on here like this. I can kind of go over it with the tool. And then cut that line with a knife or something, where I've made the impression. But I don't want it to be really flat. I want it to have a lot of dimension and depth to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and I'm going to start rolling out the clay, sticking it on here. And building it up with little flat balls here like this. But I'm not going to press them super flat. I'm going to leave them round and give them some shape and form. And that will hopefully give the tree some character, as opposed to a blanket flat piece that, maybe I put little leaves or something on. So maybe I'll have it kind of stick out more in the center part as well. So this part might be kind of higher. And I'll kind of branch it out. No pun intended there. But anyway, hopefully you guys out there are having a good week. I know it's been really hot where I live. It's been super hot. It rained here yesterday where we live, and found out that our roof has a small leak somewhere towards the back of our house. That's something that I have to contend with later. Maybe there's a hole under the shingles, or maybe the gutters need some flashing or something. Maybe the flashing is loose. So it's been kind of crazy here. And actually, so for the last week here, in the garage where I have all my stuff for my studio in there, we have a kitchen that's above. So it's in the garage, but above the garage there's a living room, and then there's also a kitchen, right? And so the kitchen has a pipe that goes out from under the sink, and it goes all the way through the house, through the garage, from one end of the garage to the other, and it's connected to a steel I-beam that goes right in the center, over basically everything. So over the past few months we've had this problem where the pipe would get clogged, and the pipe's been there since the house was built, so it's 30 years old or something like that. And just a lot of gunk had built up inside there from, grease and whatever else that, made its way down there, as well as, I don't know if soap can build up. I don't think so, but Comet, which is like a powder that you use to wash pots with. Hey, wee beast. So anyway, all this stuff had built up into a hardened material inside of the pipes. So part of the garage was not usable for a few years, because we have a little so the end of the pipe has a little thing you can unscrew that reveals the inside of the pipe. It's like a I don't know what they call it, like a cap of some sort with threads, and then the pipe itself has a threaded part. It's all made from PVC. And yeah, I did see Incredibles 2, Ashley Janet. Yeah, we can talk about that maybe after I'm talking about the garage. But so this pipe had a bunch of gunk stuck in there, and what we would do is we would take the garden hose and we put on this fitting on the garden hose, which is like a little, very, um, it's like a pickle, right? A pickle with a hole in the tip, and then it's hollow and it's thick rubber. And you put it on the end of the hose, and then you turn the hose on, and then it shoots water through that rubberized pickle thing, and then the pickle expands and fills up the hole and seals it so that all the water pressure goes through the pipe. This is stuff that I never really understood until we had problems and we looked into it. And we would always try to push all this gunk out of the pipe all the way through the entire garage and out the other end of the pipe, and it goes into the sewer, That's how it works. It's pretty simple, but last week, what we did is we tried to use it, and the water wouldn't go through at all. It was completely stopped up. So, we tried going to the Home Depot and getting like a long snake and putting it through there, and the snake would go so far, and then it couldn't go any further. It was like hitting a brick inside there, and there were no other options except to cut the entire pipe out. So we had to hire a plumber to do that, and they made an absolute mess of the garage. Like the insides of the pipe with all the food and everything that was in there, it shot out where the guy cut it with the saw, and I had thought about it beforehand. I thought the guy might be sloppy, and so I covered up all my tables, and I moved one of my tables out of the way, and covered things with plastic and stuff. But still, the guy made a giant mess, and he didn't clean up after himself really at all. So we had this really nasty, oily, greasy substance that smelled horrible, that like went all over the garage. And so I spent the past couple of days cleaning it up and disinfecting everything and all that. So it's been kind of crazy for me here, but we did see Incredibles 2, and it was a really good film. Janet, I guess you asked that. Yeah, I liked Incredibles 2 a lot. We took my son to the IMAX to see it, but it wasn't in IMAX. It was in another separate theater that just showed regular movies and stuff. But yeah, it was really, really good. Well, I can't say really, really good. I mean, it was pretty. It was good for a kids' film, I think the writer for that film is it Brad Bird, maybe? I think he wrote for the last one, the first one. Yeah, I can't complain about it. I thought it was really entertaining. I mean, although it was somewhat predictable, but still. The animation was really good. In fact, I thought the animation, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they had, depends of course if you went and saw the film early or not, but before the film they showed a film by some of the animators where they had like an Asian woman and an old man who live in a house, and then the woman is making these dumplings or something, like an Asian dumpling, and it was sort of a metaphor for her son. I probably shouldn't spoil it for everybody, but I thought it was really interesting. Like a really unique take on how people see things from a family point of view when somebody moves out or their kid grows up and they do strange and other things that you don't approve of, and so villain was worse than Syndrome. So it says, well, yeah, I thought that the film was pretty good. I think the voice acting was it was all right, and animation was of course really good. Story was pretty good. Okay, so our tree here is starting to take shape. I think that the center part of the tree being expanded like this is gonna look pretty nice when I light it. Let's see here, so I'll give it some shadows, a dimension. So once I get this thing looking fairly close to what I want, I'm probably going to add just a few different colors. I've got, like I say, I've got some slightly darker clay. I don't want to add this really light clay, but let's see here. This might look alright. This one's like a bit more waxy. I don't understand that, but anyways, gonna build up the bottom. Yeah, so I liked it. I don't know, Pixar pretty much, I don't think they've made too many bad films. I think there's like a Wreck-It Ralph 2 coming out as well, which, you know, I'm surprised there's not another Shrek film coming out. You know, how many sequels do they make in Hollywood nowadays? It's almost all sequels. And then there's going to be the Bumblebee film, which is one of the Transformers. I'm not a huge Transformer fan, to be honest. I mean, I grew up with it in the 80s. There's a cartoon on TV where, you know, all your friends had Transformer toys. And you know, there are lots of different characters like the Decepticons, and they had they used to have these characters that turned into cassette tapes, you know, in the cartoon. And I guess what they actually did with that was they tried to, like what George Lucas did, where he kind of planned on making toys for most of his characters. So in the Transformers cartoons, they kind of did the same thing. And it's not too bad. So a lot of my friends would have Transformers, and they were always kind of expensive toys. And back then, they didn't really make everything out of plastic either. So if you got a Transformer, most of it was made from actual metal. Nowadays, they don't do that so much. I don't even think they make metal Tonka trucks anymore, like when we were, you know, when I was a kid. It's like you would have friends that would have Tonka trucks, and they would leave them outside their house, and the rain would get on them, and they'd be all rusty, and you would need a tetanus shot just to play with them. Alright, so I've got some variety of colors, green colors here. Got some of this dark green, which looks pretty good on here, I think. And it's really subtle. That's completely fine. I don't want any of this green to sort of stick out and be a distraction. I want it to all kind of blend in together. So a really subtle variety. And let's see, maybe just a little more down here. Yeah, I don't know. You know, one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of stuff on the internet is people are just... I've heard that a lot of actors and actresses do not like to get involved in remakes anymore because it's gotten so highly politicized, almost. Like with Star Wars, you know, if they make a mistake or don't do a good job story-wise, or if the fans don't like something, or... Usually the actors and actresses are the ones that get blamed for it. Like I think the Ghostbusters film, there was that one black actress that she was, you know, threatened with death and stuff, you know, for not living up to some sort of expectations, you know. So a lot of the stuff in Hollywood it's gotten really weird. Okay, so with this, I'm just going to kind of take my tool. I'm going to blend all this together a little bit. And I wonder what this texture pad will look like when I start to... Kind of looking at my camera here to see what this looks like. My webcam. Oops. I might go kind of light on the texture here. The Bob Ross of stop motion. Yeah, well, it's gonna have lots of little Apple friends pretty soon. Okay, so I'm gonna just blend all this together. I don't know. I think that the texture works, but I'm thinking maybe the sculpted texture just by using my tool might look nice. We'll have to see here. So I don't know if you guys ever used ZBrush before, but there are artists that work at Blizzard. They make a lot of video games, and in ZBrush digitally they have essentially texture pads like this, and they call them, you can use either alphas or brushes, which are designed to give things a certain look. Could be like a faceted flat sort of look, or for grooves, or for hair, or, you know, just all kinds of things, rock patterns. And it's really kind of interesting how those things work, and it can look pretty nice. But, you know, it's kind of a hassle to go and, like, in terms of stop motion, there are certain things which are good for 3D printing. I think like faces and puppets with a lot of replacement, like hands and helmets, or things that are cyclical. So, for example, like a running cycle of a bug or something where the lower body is replaced many times or something like that. I mean, there's certain things where 3D printing is pretty good for that. And you can do all kinds of stuff where you texture things in ZBrush and then you can 3D print those things. But 3D printing is not really the same as with clay. Like, unless you have a super good 3D printer, it's really hard to do something like what I'm doing here in a 3D printer and then print it, sand it, or, you know, fill in all the little textured lines that it leaves, and then paint it, and then make it look like clay. It's just more trouble than it's worth, at least for now. Unless they make a 3D printer that can 3D print clay like this, which would be kind of cool. But even still, you'd still have to smooth it and work it with the tool anyway, I think, because you'd still have all those lines and stuff. So I don't know if 3D printing will ever replace something like this and digital sculpting. As neat as those things are, you know, I think those are really fun. But even when I sculpt for my clients right now, like I sculpt digital characters, their faces, and we 3D print them, the final surface is clay. So if anybody is thinking of doing something like this, you know, with the 3D printer, at least in 2018, you can't really do it. But I had to say, digitally sculpting is a lot of fun. It really is, and it's sort of like when you're using stop motion with a frame grabber versus stop motion with surface gauges or drawing on a monitor, which doesn't capture frames, so you can see where your puppet's been. Like, you get this instant feedback as a sculpting thing, as a sculpting medium, or whatever you want to call it, digital sculpting medium. It's instant, and it's nice. But from a practical point of view, until they can really overcome all the problems of 3D printers right now, because 3D printing is pretty good, and to do it really well, you need an expensive 3D printer. But for the average person, the most you can do is really limited. Even the high-end, laser 3D printers, they're nice, and you can get some good details, but not the kind of detail that I like. But honestly, there's going to be a point when it gets to the stage where you can do stuff like this really fast in a 3D printer, and it'll probably be just as good. So, the moral of the story is, be prepared and learn the technology as it comes up. If you don't want to fall behind, you got to stay up to date with what's going on, the programs and the hardware and different devices and things that artists are using. It's always good to do that. And in fact, I think Henry Selick is super into technology, because he was one of the first people to use 3D printing, or to push for it, to use it as a stop motion enhancer of sorts. Henry Selick was also the first to go full on in with motion control in a sort of very big way with Nightmare Before Christmas. So I think that he's really helped to evolve stop motion to where it is today. And of course that could be argued, like maybe it's too polished looking and too clean looking, and we can get into debates about all that stuff. But the technology is not bad. It all depends on how you decide to use it. Let me see here. So how's this look on the camera? That's pretty good. So you're wearing your Bob Ross t-shirt. Cool. I'd like to get one of those. Actually, my nephew has one. And so Ron says, I've seen 3D printed clay, which would be great for me, but the last time I checked, the printer shop near me doesn't use it yet. Well, there is one from Adam Bean. What is it, like that? It's like C4 or something. It's a 3D printable filament, which is made from like a wax. So it heats up, and then it prints, and then after it prints, it cools off, and then you can use tools like this one. You heat it up, and you can smooth out the details, or use an alcohol lamp, the kind that's used for jewelry, and then you can sort of smooth it out that way. But I remember reading somewhere that he was not in good health, and so Adam's been on the mend from some sort of like heart condition or something like that. And I think that he postponed that particular 3D filament, and I don't know if I think he had an update not too long ago that they may release it, but I don't really know if that's going to happen. So if he doesn't, somebody else will definitely come along and probably make a good filament. But like I say, that's all good. It's actually not bad at all to do that, because you can digitally reproduce a sculpture over and over that way. But in the end, you still gotta clean it up. Gotta clean those lines up and the little stair steps and things. And once you clean it up, if you make a mold, you can cast it. Depending on how complicated it is, and like certain things, like I think Ron, I remember Ron, you mentioned when I was making my Bendy's armature kits, you said, well, why don't you just print one and then put it in a mold, maybe silicone or whatever, and then cast those. And certain stuff you can 3D print, which has a lot of undercuts, which you can't really mold. Super complicated things. So, in that case, there's times when you really can't do anything other than 3D print things. But if you don't have a lot of undercuts, you can just sculpt it digitally, 3D print the clay, clean it up, and then mold it, which, that saves time as well, like you had mentioned. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's 3D printing kind of went through a craze phase where a lot of people were into it, and I think even Barnes and Noble was selling those printers for a long time, like the Cube. I think it was the Cube printers or something like that. Best Buy, Barnes and Noble. I think that Home Depot even got into it for a while. And honestly, I use my 3D printer for a lot of stuff. And I use it sometimes for practical things like making hardware, and like I have a shelf on my desk where I made these little brackets so I could sort of put everything in there on my desk on a shelf. And actually, let me see something really quick here. Put this near my camera. Okay, I'm just checking to see how this looks. So yeah, I fixed my refrigerator with the little piece that slipped over the bar that cracked, like the plastic bar. So I made like a little connector, and it worked really well. But a lot of people had to, use their minds and their time and design things themselves. And most people would rather just like go out and buy a part at Ace Hardware, so. But if you're creative, you're just like, all right, I can fix this. I'll just sculpt this like this or like that and print it out, see how it works. But for some people, it's a little bit too much, which I can understand too, especially when everybody's so busy these days. Alright, so we got some texture going on here, and let's see. Oops, get that real quick. Let's see if I can lift this off the paper. There we go. Here's the underside. Very flat. So this would sit on here like this. I think that'll look pretty good like this. So what I need to do is I need to make a platform underneath it to raise it up. See if I can use some of this junky clay over here. So I don't want to use any of my good clay to do that because it's not going to be seen. So I have some of this sort of sculpting grayish green color, which is, it's also Van Aken. What color is this exactly? Sculptor Gray. Yeah. after that. Okay, so how big do I need to make this? About this big. Okay. So that's really cool that you have an actual 3D printer shop, Ron, near you. I don't have that luxury in Springfield that I know of. I mean, maybe somebody's doing that, but not that I've seen. So have you printed a lot of stuff for like armatures or puppet parts, or like what do you? I mean, that would take the hassle out of it for sure. Like if you could design something and then bring it in and just have it printed, sort of like Shapeways. Okay, and just a little more clay here. And then we can start adding the apples. Right. There we are. All right, there's our tree. So I might just need to alter this branch. It's kind of bent in a weird way, which I don't like too much. And kind of do this. I'm gonna need just a little bit more of a leafy pattern here to kind of cover up where that branch goes. Like that, and some texture. Let's see, that's a little bit better. Kinda. Kinda better, but not really. Let's see. No, that's good like that. And I might move the whole thing down just a tad bit instead. Here, let's see how that is. Oh. And that's pretty good. Alright. Very good, very good. So now my fingers have a lot of green clay, so I'm going to use some of my 91% alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to kind of clean my hands off. Reason being is when I do use the red clay, I don't want to get the green on the clay. All this green clay on the red clay. So just take some paper towels. Now if you have baby wipes work really good for this as well. Just kind of put it in my hand, and this will dissolve the clay a bit. So Ron says they deliver anywhere. I've never printed anything. Ah, okay. Janet says I don't have a 3D printer. Well, not really. I mean, a lot of people do, but I think only the people that are, you know, pretty much needing it for businesses or for a fun hobby, people buy it. My family usually has me print stuff for them. I mean, my brother-in-law and my two nephews are into Dungeons and Dragons, so ugh, this is some strong alcohol. So they go on Thingiverse and they go on the role-playing games and stuff like that. They have a whole section for that, and they're always asking me to print out stuff for them. So I printed out like little tables and chairs and things like that, just just for their game playing experience to be better, I guess. I've always been into the miniatures. I thought that like the Warhammer figures and all were just a real lot of fun. So I used to buy them and paint them for fun. Okay, so now we have our puppet putty. So this is the first time I'm using puppet putty for an actual film project. And this is just a straight red. And now I know Don Carlson is altering the formula somewhat. So instead of having like a hard formula and a soft formula, he's gonna have a medium. But you can sort of see how this works and how it behaves. It's a bit more waxy, and that's why I wanted it for the apples. But it's a great clay because it doesn't crack so quick. So you can bend it back and forth a lot. So if you have like if this were a bird or something, like wings, you know, it just doesn't crack, right? It's great. It's not the same as Van Aken. If I do that with Van Aken, it'll crack way quicker. But this is just, it's got so much of a wax content in there. And the oil and the wax are at a really good ratio. So it just works great. Okay, so now for the apples. So the question is, how big do I make the apples? And how detailed as well. Not really sure if I should make these super detailed. Yeah, it's gonna look pretty awesome. A nice shiny red apple. That's great. Yeah, I really like this stuff. So, Janet says that 3D printers are expensive. Yep, they are. They can be very expensive. You gotta buy filament and all that kind of stuff as well. And then there's the electricity and time you have to invest into it. So I can understand that. It is pretty expensive. All right. Getting pretty excited about this. I mean, this is I don't have a lot more to do before I can start taking pictures of all this stuff for animation. It's actually pretty cool. Right. Sometimes you can just tell when you have too much clay, and you just, usually by feel or by eye. This is like just a tad bit too much. I'm going to try to make these apples uniform in size if possible. Yeah. Still a little bit too much. There we go. Let's see. So I'm thinking of just calling this film The Apple Tree. Keeping it simple. Just kind of rolling it in my fingers. Checking the size. If it's too big, just pinch a piece off. Re-roll it. Yep, this is going to be pretty neat. And what I was really hoping for was for the apples to pop out, you know, so your eye goes to them. And it's definitely going to work. Like looking in my web camera, I can see how they do have a sort of vivid vividness to them, I guess you could call it. That's exactly what I want. See what time is it? It's got 15 more minutes left. So I guess after I finish making all these, so next week, what'll be left is to make the bridge that goes across here, a little bridge. You can see where I drew it on there. So about right here, right there. However, looking at this, yeah, let me see here. How far does that go down? I might add the bridge lower, maybe in here. Just trying to think of how I'll have this framed in the camera. So the mother character has to go across and then over. And then this will be about where the other characters will stand. So I might have it where the base of the bridge is somewhere in here. Maybe like right across here. Yeah, we'll have to see. Oops. Very nice, very nice. All right. So anyways, for those of you who are new to our channel and to our website, definitely check out our 5-week challenges. So like I said at the beginning of the show, is that... Oh, so Janet's saying if I want 11 figures for RPG, how much must I pay? I think it's like between $15 and $30. Depends on what you get. I've seen them in stores. Probably like 15 to 30 bucks. If you get them, if they're cast in metal, they're really expensive. Sometimes you could pay like, you know, $15 for one if it's really detailed. So anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, our 5-week challenges. So every 5 weeks we have a new challenge where we do make like a stop motion film. So if ever you're interested in, if anybody out there wants to join up and just make a short film or animation or experiment along the lines of whatever the topic is at the time, it's a good way to just keep your skills honed and sharpened, especially if you're not actually making a film. So, for example, let's say you're planning on making a film in the future, but you're telling yourself, oh, well, I don't really know if I'm good at animation. Check out our 5-week challenges. And in fact, yesterday I posted a video from somebody that made an entire tutorial on the basics of animation, all the main principles. Any of the principles that he mentions are from Disney, from like the 9 Old Men and whatnot. And he explains like squash and stretch and follow through and things like that, which is really educational, and it's just a lot of fun, to learn it and to do it. It's a lot of fun making these kind of films. So if you're, wanting to just, like I say, keep your skills sharp or improve on your skills, check out our 5-week challenges. Okay, so Janet is saying, what does it cost if you 3D print those figures? Well, if you're going to 3D print those figures, yeah, well, Ron is right. It depends on the material and the printer. It depends on a lot of things. But it's almost always cheaper to make it yourself in almost every single case. That is if you own the printer, Like if you go to shapeways.com or someplace, they might charge you more because they have a whole structure of fees that add into the equation the person that has to clean up the print after it's done. Well, the lowest price would be like 5 to 10 cents for a figure if you use a PLA 3D printer. Just printing on any kind of really cheap PLA filament, and the figure is, let's say, how many millimeters tall, like 10 millimeters or something like that. It's usually really tiny, and it costs almost nothing. I don't know if I want that one there. Move that. Move that one. There we go. Yeah, it's super cheap to make, low quality prints with PLA. I mean, there's almost no cost, because for a kilogram it's like $15 to $20. So you're talking about just for one figure. It is, it's amazingly cheap. So you figure, let's say it costs 10 cents and then you make 11 of them. If you do the math, it's, I don't know, you're talking about Polish money. I don't know the conversion, but it's like, let's just say if we're really liberal and we get like an expensive filament, let's just say it costs $2 for 11 figures or something like that. Some kind of high-end PLA filament. Maybe it glows in the dark, or whatever. They've got all kinds of cool stuff. But so let's see. So I think we're looking pretty good here with the apples. I think I'll add just a few more. Maybe along the very bottom here. Add another one. How does that look? So I want this tree to appear like it has plenty of apples. So I don't want it to be sparse. Get some there. So along the bottom, I'm kind of using slightly smaller ones because my thinking is that the center of the tree is kind of bulging up towards you, so it doesn't appear bigger. And then towards the outer edges, since they're further away, even though it's just, forced perspective, you would have some smaller apples along the edges. So I'm just going to add a few more small ones around the outside. Oh, you mean, what is the name? Yeah, Shapeways. I think they're located in New York. Am I wrong? I might be wrong about that, but it's either New York or California. And so shipping would be expensive to Poland, unfortunately. Let's see. So here, something like this. There we go. I don't want to overdo it with apples, but let's see, how does this look? I think big one right about here. And right there too. Just kind of make another one here. All right. Should I make any more? Let's see. Yeah, maybe here. Yeah. Let's see. I think that would be pretty good. All right, so I think we're done with this tree. I think that's enough. Enough with the apples. Put my clay back in its bag. Puppet putty. Let's see. So let me show you guys what it looks like up close, so you can sort of see what I've done. All right, so here we have our apples. That's what it looks like. So the original thing we did, of course, was we just took the clay, 2 different colors, and you can sort of see it this way a little bit better. You can see a slight variety in the colors. And after that, we made the little balls and followed the shape with our design. Used our tool to kind of go over and blend it all together. And then finally we used a texture pad to kind of go over the whole thing. And then we used our puppet putty for the apples. And like I said, I think that the waxiness, also there's like a contrast in the sheen to it, you know. So we have more of a matte sheen for the Van Aken green clay, and a more of a glossy sheen for the puppet putty. So I think that's gonna be pretty darn cool. There we go. All right. So I'm pretty happy with that. Anyways, I guess that will conclude our show because we've only got 4 minutes left. But if you guys have any comments about anything on our show, anything you'd like to see, anything any improvements you'd like to see, or perhaps topics you want us to talk about. So if you have a clay animated film you're working on your own, so maybe you're making a puppet or something like that, or you're trying to figure out how to make the armature because maybe your puppets are falling over or whatever. I mean, who knows? When I was first starting out in stop motion, much of what I did was trial and error. So I always learned the hard way, to be honest. I learned the hard way how to do everything. And so I do know how frustrating it can get trying to make films and try to understand what the best tools are and techniques. So if you guys have any questions about anything like that, definitely let me know in the comments or just send me an email. And like I say, also visit animateclay.com, check it out, and share your pictures and your puppets, your stories, your films, your animation, your tests, anything like that you have. That's what it's there for. And okay, so I guess I will see you guys all next week. Thanks for stopping by.